This is the LiPetri Show. Joy Connolly, what's going on? Hey, Joy.
Hi, Mike.
Welcome to the show. Very excited to have you on.
Really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I can't tell you how many young mothers in their 20s, in their 30s, who were just so anxious to hear from you and learn all about this, because I had so many women asking me, young mothers saying, hey, can you please talk about childcare? That's such a big issue across Long Island, and everyone is just so anxious to hear what resources are available, what's the reason for the costs, how can young families get help, older families get help. It's just help in general, right?
Yeah. So it's huge. And, there's so many things that young mothers have to think about, from once you know that you're pregnant, and childcare really is one of those things, like, because you realize, like, at some point I need to go back to work, and how am I going to make this work? And then when you start looking at it and you hear about wait lists and the costs and the lack of available slots, it gets very overwhelming. So
yeah, and I think that's why it's so vital what your organization, for those of you who don't know, we have joining us Joy Connolly, the past executive director of the Child Care Council of Nassau, Inc., which is a private, not-for-profit organization that has served the community for over 50 years.
Yes,
which is incredible. That is
amazing.
Incredible. I mean, the fact that this nonprofit provides child care counseling, referrals to families, professional development, technical assistance to active and potential providers. For me, it's you are integral to this island in helping families grow and help children develop for years to come.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, is really to, the founders of the organization in the 70s saw that women were going back to work, and that there was no one really to help kind of navigate. What does that look like? What are the questions I'm supposed to ask about quality? How do I connect families to this childcare industry, which is, again, mostly small businesses, often times run by women themselves. And so it really has, the mission has stayed the same about being available to working families who are living or working in Nassau County to find high quality childcare. But the scope of our work has shifted a lot as the demands have grown. And so I'm excited that we're now able to not only provide families as a resource, but really the childcare industry as well, in terms of infant toddler mental health, nutrition education, healthcare support. So really the kind of well-rounded supports that all families with young children and those that are working in the industry need in order to support high quality care.
Where do you think what are your top 3 issues right now that families are coming to you and they're expressing?
I think the number one thing is that the cost of care is just astronomical, and so it's such a hard burden, and that there are opportunities for childcare assistance, but across the income spectrum, families are really feeling that childcare, in some instances, it makes more sense for one of the parents to stay home instead of to bring in an income and pay for childcare. And so that's really
that's a common issue that I'm talking to so many families that are actually evaluating. They're saying it pays more for me just to stay home and raise my child, whether it be the mother or the father staying home, than both of us going out, because what's happening is one parent is just paying strictly for childcare.
You're just working for the childcare.
So what's the point of that?
It makes no sense. But it also then, oftentimes the care falls on women, and there is a detriment to kind of women having to opt out of the workforce, particularly young professionals, right, at a really key point. So I think that the reason it is striking up so much conversation is that, it's an unfair question to have to put on a family. And then, we're also then leaning on grandparents a lot, right? So
Tons.
I know that, my mom made some decisions about not wanting to be the primary caregiver of her grandchildren, which makes sense. Like, she's, wanted to be in retirement and enjoy life. So she
I did this already.
Exactly. Like selected, like you can send them for holiday breaks, but like, I don't want to be the Tuesday, Thursday caregiver. Right. And so many grandparents, again, they love their families and want to support and provide that burden. But I do think it is putting some uncomfortable conversations between parents and children.
What are the primary cost drivers for childcare? Because I think, would you agree that the average childcare costs on Long Island is approximately $20K, around there?
Yeah.
25,000?
Yeah.
Would that be a fair number?
Yeah, fair. Again, it varies by age. Infants and toddlers cost more to care for than a preschooler or a school age that's in before and after care. And the highest driver is that the state regulates childcare very stringently, which we are glad for the health and safety of all children. But it means that the adult-child ratio is very high. So if you have an infant in care, the ratio is for 4 infants is to 1 adult. And so if you think of a classroom, typically an infant classroom has 8, so you need to have 2 adults in that classroom. And so that's, the salaries for those employees is what eats up the cost, then drives the price of childcare to be so high because of the higher adult-child ratio.
What about operational costs?
So there are definitely operational costs. I think, we're on Long Island, so the rents, if you're in a commercial space.
The rent's too damn high.
Exactly. And just like anything else, right, with inflation, costs have been going up and the things that childcare programs need, lots of sanitizer before and after the pandemic, right? There's a lot of kind of cleaning that has to be done in order for
a lot of cleaning.
Yeah. In order for children to be in a safe environment.
So that's very interesting how you're with the ratio 4 to 1. Now, how does the hierarchy work? Do you need a certain amount of teachers, then assistants, then staff, and then directors? Like, how does that hierarchy work? For example, in a school, you have obviously, say, regular school system, you have a superintendent, assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent, and then beyond, then you have principal, assistant principal, et cetera, et cetera. How does it work in the sense of child care?
Yeah, so great question. So also the state in New York, it's regulated by the Office of Children and Family Services. And so there are, it's a very thick binder of regulations, but anybody can find it on the OCFS website. And so there are regulations about, particularly for a commercial space in a center setting, you need to have a director, you need to have a lead teacher, you need to have an assistant teacher, and the qualifications that would go along with that. But childcare can be both in a commercial setting where you kind of see as you're driving down the highway a office space with maybe children in the window, but it can also be family childcare. So that's where there's an adult who takes care of children who are not their own in their home. And what we know on Long Island is that's really the largest growing modality of care is family child care. And, it speaks to the needs for some families, particularly, if you do have a young infant, having them in a commercial space might make you feel less comfortable than having them in more of a home setting. You still have the same regulations in terms of quality of care, but it might make you feel a little more comfortable.
So it's that same scrutiny, though.
Yes.
For viewers and listeners.
Yes.
It's not just like someone's got a home and they're like Airbnb-ing it.
No, it's not Airbnb.
Like, this is something where it's highly regulated, scrutinized.
Yes.
This is where these people have to go through many different hurdles to even get licensed and permitted.
Background checks and fingerprinting, and they're held to the same health and safety standards as a center would be. So yes, if they're licensed or regulated with the state, then it's a very viable option.
Have the Child Care Council at Nassau, your organization, do you have a list that people can they call you? Can they email you? How do you act as a conduit for those? Because something for me is families say, where do I go? Obviously you have word of mouth, but besides word of mouth, like, how can they really have that menu of choices where if I know different, you have that with restaurants, right? I can
Right.
just Google
Right.
restaurants and say, but can I really Google childcare
You
spots?
can, but I would definitely caution you
Exactly.
because so the Child Care Council of Nassau and Suffolk, we both have databases that are linked to the regulatory system, and so we know information, not just kind of the location of a program, but if they've had violations where they, or if if their license has been suspended or revoked for any reason, you're going to get a place, a location, a website. But some of the kind of background information that we are able to have is very integral. And the other benefit to the database that we have is that we have information about some of the nuance and needs of families. So if a family is looking for a program that supports children with special needs, or have special dietary restrictions, or have a want something with a certain certification in a curriculum or things of that sort. Those kind of nuanced, requirements we have in our database, and the parent counselors that they can access, which are bilingual English, Spanish, and we're hoping to add someone who's bilingual English, Haitian Creole soon. They would be able to talk a family through that. You can also do an online referral search on our website. So a family can just go to our website, childcarenassau.org. You go to a referral, and you can do an online search and have access to the information that we have in our database.
Is there ability for the parents to then review it as like a 5-star ranking or system or rating system or comments like Yelp reviews? Does that exist as well?
That's a great question. So the state has a quality rating and improvement system that's called Quality Stars New York, but we haven't fully implemented so that there's the ability for consumers to give those ratings. So right now the ratings are given to those that voluntarily get into the quality rating and improvement system through a very serious amount of assessments and benchmarks that the program has to adhere to. So you could have a 5-star program or a 3-star or a 2-star or 1-star, but it hasn't been rolled out to the public so that
So it's internal only?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you have your child in a child care program, you can ask them, are you a part of Quality Stars New York?
Okay.
And then in some instances, they post their star rating like on the window or in the door, the entryway, for their families to know. But there
Does
hasn't
the
been
Child Care Council of Nassau release that if the parent asks
If
you?
a parent asks, we can definitely share that information.
You can share. So you don't. It's not proactive, but it's rather just being asked and then offering.
Correct.
Yeah, I got you.
Correct.
I see how the state's working. I got you. That's why I asked these questions. So for all the viewers and listeners, make sure to ask. Hey, what was it? The exact
Quality Stars New York.
Quality Stars New York rating. I want to know that Quality Stars New York rating. I like that very much. See that?
Yeah.
That's what. So I think for me, it's a matter of for you and I, we understand why childcare is so important to Long Island and this isn't. But I think it's more about integrating now this mentality into local businesses. I was hoping you could talk more about how come childcare is so important for families and for businesses alike, how there's more of a harmony rather than a battle between those two ideas.
Right. Yeah. I love that idea of phrasing it as a harmony, because childcare, one, for those that are your employees, what we know and the research shows that families and employees who have a sense that their child is being cared for in a safe environment are more productive, right? So we can all understand that. If I'm worried about where my child is and being cared for while I'm doing my 9-to-5 job, then I'm not going to be as productive. And so childcare should be important to all the HR departments who are working with new employees and existing employees to make sure that kind of allows them to feel satisfied and able to come to work ready. The other is that it's an industry, right? So there are 8,000 employees of childcare programs on Long Island. And so we want, we know that if you are putting money into childcare, a dollar in gets $7 back. That's what the leading economist, James Heckman, has told us. And so just in an economic standpoint, that there is real dollars that are coming back to the local community when childcare is working for the childcare businesses and the employees of that use that service.
How is that coming back into the community? Can you elaborate on that further?
Sure. So it comes back in several ways. One, the childcare business is then purchasing catering services, is purchasing office supplies, and so there's money that's coming into other businesses in the area, and then we save money in the long term. So for remedial services, for second language supports, for even further for juvenile attention. So if a child is in a high quality childcare program, then the benefits kind of go on and on for a community.
Now, we were talking about in the beginning of affordability. I'm going to go back. I was asking the top three issues you get. Number one is affordability.
Right.
And we're going to expound on this a little bit with the businesses further with the working and because I want to also ask about structure of timing. But what were the other two as well? The top with the second and third one.
Yeah,
what would you say?
The second is really about accessibility. So
which is fantastic because I want to talk about exactly that with timing, where it schedules that coincide with parents' work schedules rather than conflict.
Right, and that is really an issue. So if you are a worker that works second shift, or if you work kind of in this gig economy, so it's not a scheduled, every week is the same schedule, then finding childcare that allows that flexibility is very difficult. Although again, with family childcare as an option, those that are registered and licensed with the state, there's more flexibility for that kind of care in a family setting versus in a center setting, where most centers operate from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Right, and so then, as someone who had long nights, I would be the parent rushing at the end to try to get my kid, and then I'd still have to pay the late fee, right?
And then on top of it, you get a speeding ticket.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, wait, okay.
Damn it! I just got another 150 for that one, and I need to get that's. Yes. And I think that's what's so very difficult for those different times. I mean, in a way, the work from home, the hybrid now, I think, would have much more flexibility to allow that, where now it's not 5 days a week or certain times you can then be in the office and come back and then work from home, right?
Right.
But what about those workers, say, for example, in the service industry? I mean, what do they? How do they do that?
It's very, very challenging, and I think that luckily the state is attuned to that. There's a need for non-traditional hours, but it's how to incentivize childcare programs to provide that, right? So if you think about offering a 24-hour childcare program, the amount
that'd be epic.
It would be.
Oh my God.
Amazing, right? But how do you staff it? How do you, how do you, get all of the expenses and revenue right in order to
the cost benefit. Keep it open from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., but who's then occupying what children? And then not only that, then on top of it is security, then it's comfortability.
Exactly.
I mean, now you get into a whole different paradigm, which is very difficult to roll out. But in the one sense, this is where capitalism, frankly, takes hold, in the sense of if there is that niche business, then that will exist. But I think it's more about the fact is discovering if it does. Is there any surveys or studies that have been done by the state or others that have actually indicated that said issue is needed?
So the council does take data from the parents that are calling, and then we do send that to the state, which shows that there's an increased ask for non-traditional hours.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And then there's also the data about the industry, which shows that it does not exist in large numbers to meet the requests that are happening. In New York City, there are more options for 24-hour care. We do a lot of support for those that are looking to get into the industry, and so we've been counseling several interested folks into what would it look like and how do we
How to roll it out.
Yeah, how to roll it out, how to make that happen. And so I do think that there is both the need but also the interest for business owners on Long Island to kind of figure out how we can make this happen.
Now, is there a hybrid payment with accessibility? Talking about accessibility, but even affordability, is there a hybrid payment at all between the parents paying, but then also money from the state? Is there any tax credits, incentives, anything like that? I know something that Governor Hochul had pitched in her State of the State in the beginning of 2023. Is that something that was part of it?
Yes, it is. So in her budget, she is using a model that was done in Michigan, and it's like the parent would pay a third, the state would pay a third, and then the employer would pay a third. So I think Long Island has a really good relationship with the Regional Economic Development Council.
Yep.
And the Child Care Resource Referral Agency is myself and Child Care Council of Suffolk. And so I think that and we've been doing a lot of talking about kind of how to figure out a new model for this work, because the current one's not working. So if that goes through with the budget, we are hoping that Long Island will be one of the pilot locations for that, so we can test it out. We can get the data. We can work with employers and families to figure out what's the best kind of mix of the sauce that makes sense. But
Right. Act as Long Island as like a laboratory for the rest of the state, just to see, hey, what's this best for the suburbs? What works well? How
Right.
to make it affordable, but also make it where it's reasonable in terms of cost to even start it up and operate
Exactly.
them. Because at the end of the day, you want to have a heavy supply that makes sense to allow parents the choices to go to the best providers
Yes.
for their children. This is such a sensitive topic because I think something that the Child Care Council really has played an integral part in was improving the children's lives at the outset of beginning stages of their lives. So many people put an emphasis on postgraduate K through 12, this free college tuition mentality. And for me, that's never been a thing because I never liked that for other reasons. I care about that 0 through 5.
Yeah.
That is so instrumental in creating children, their character, their intellect, their personalities, right? Something that's
Right.
where you forge it all.
That's it. That foundation is built. That's 0
Foundation.
to 5, right? The brain architecture is building. Those pathways, those synapses are happening. I mean, you can just imagine, you can see what from a newborn to a 5-year-old, the amount of growth, and that's not just in their physical body, that's in their brain development as well. And so we really want to invest at that time.
Exactly.
The most that we can.
That's where the investment needs to happen right at the outset, and recognizing how parents are working now dual income jobs. Unlike 50 years ago, when it
Right.
was really single income household, now you have to have on Long Island a dual income household.
Oh.
It's becoming the cost of
Exactly.
more and more and more. And now childcare, which is the most precious part, is when you have a creation of a family. I see it with my 1.5-year-old niece, right? Every single day I have my parents, thank God, my parents over there who are just grateful to have their granddaughter and be there to mold her and develop her and help her. But that's what's so important. Every single day, they are
Exactly.
just learning. They are picking up
Right,
different
they're
traits.
sponges. They
Sponges.
take everything, right? And so we want to make sure that their entire environment surrounded by the nurture and care and intellectual, social, emotional stimulation that they need to be full, happy, productive children that then go on, of course, then they're ready for the K-12
Correct.
system.
And that's a ripple effect from there on
Exactly.
forward. Because now you have the intellect, you have the development, the character, the personality, et cetera, And that's why, for me, I think that government completely needs to shift this mindset. Instead of looking at later on in life, you're looking at early, right at the outset, how we're having these proactive style of care, lessons, teaching. And let me say, with that, with not only accessibility and care, but with that teaching, does the council at all work in tandem with preschool too?
We do.
Now, those are two separate, to me, correct? For categories wise, you have childcare and then you have preschool. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, pre-K, and that is funded through the state. Is a completely different system and attached to the K-12 system, unlike the childcare industry. And so there are, different regulations. The Office of Children and Family Services oversees childcare,
Right.
and the state education department oversees the pre-K. So there are different spaces, but again, luckily on Long Island, there are so many forward-thinking leaders that say, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, or a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, regardless of setting, and there's some real integral professional development opportunities that need to happen for these teachers. And the K-12 system is not necessarily always set up to understand what the 4-year-old needs, because it's new to this, and it's part of a much longer way of the childcare of the child's life, right? And so we have been lucky to work with a regional technical assistance center for pre-K and early childhood, where we've collaborated on several conferences. We have a summer institute coming up in June, and we also do a annual conference day in November, and just allowing for high quality professional development that's geared towards this age specifically, so that those teachers can provide the best that they can to those in the classroom. And then we also do some coaching for pre-K administrators and superintendents and districts around what does high quality look like in the pre-K space, particularly around
I think that's essential right there, is exactly that definition of what is high quality. Right. And I think that, is there something that is actually defined? Is that actually defined? For example, I had a guest on prior episodes talking about affordable housing. What is the exact legal definition, right? Do we have an actual legal definition for quality childcare?
Yes and no. I mean, I think that there's like in any kind of education space, there's a lot of like
that gray.
Right, exactly. Some people feel it should be this way or that way. I mean, I think that high quality care, right, when we're looking at 4-year-olds, to me is about what does it look like and sound like. So when I walk into a classroom with 4-year-olds, right, are they laughing, right? Do I hear laughter? Do I hear joy? Do I hear excitement and energy? If it's super duper quiet, then, to me, that's not high quality care.
Houston, we have a problem.
Exactly. Right. And so the other is around choice, right? What we want young children to figure out is about kind of who they are and how to be independent thinkers. And so that involves them having to practice making those choices. So to us, with the adult mind, it might not make sense about, do I want to go to the block area or to the dramatic play area? But for a 4-year-old mind, and again, they've only been here for 4 years on this earth, right? Having to really make decisions about where I want to be, make choices once I get there, or that I'm going to play with the blocks and the cars. And then the adult facilitates that higher learning, right? The language and enhancement, the how to share. We don't say take turns. It's really about sharing the materials, which you would need to do in any other setting, right? How do you collaborate? How do you problem solve? And so the adult is really facilitating those larger learning lessons in ways that allow children to feel empowered, to feel intelligent, to feel confident. So when it translates to a chemistry lesson, right, it comes from, I know I'm able to do hard things, right? I've tried these things out, and I've negotiated in spaces that were safe and secure, right? To me, that's high quality childcare.
So you were talking about you don't like to take turns. Why is that? Because I thought that's something that's instrumental in terms of child interaction and collaboration, is that you wanted to say, no, his turn or her turn.
Yeah, well, it's something that you want to develop, but when you're thinking about kind of the younger children, particularly kind of 0 to 3, that idea of taking turns is not fully formulated in their brain, right? And so what we talk about with parents or childcare providers is that you want to build a yes environment, right? And so if you're saying, I need you to take turns, what the 2-year-old is hearing is no, right? I'm not allowed to do that. I can't have it. And then what happens is tantrums, right? And so then the child, so you say, there's one car, and you say, it's Johnny's turn now, and you have to wait, right? And then me, as Joy, says, what the heck? I don't understand about waiting. I'm going to flail myself on the ground.
But isn't that necessary for discipline, and also the hierarchy of a parent and child relationship?
So what we want to think about it is, how do you set up an environment so that children are hearing yes more than no, right? It doesn't mean that you want it to be unsafe. So it's not like you're going to have knives out on the table. But if instead of having only one car, there should be 2 cars, right? And so each child would be able to play.
Will have their own car. Absolutely.
Play with their own car, right?
But at the same time, we don't want to enable behavior where it's just, I get what I want always.
Right. So it's also, again, about the frame. So instead of the frame being a scarcity, I am... the reason I'm doing this is because it is my ego that's talking. It's really about, again, that in that early stages, the environment and the action, it's not a willful against the parent. So when you're talking about kind of providing discipline, a 2-year-old doesn't throw a tantrum because they are trying to assert their dominance over the parent, right? Anything that involves kind of you butting heads with a 2-year-old, you need to let that battle go, right? Because what the child is saying is that I don't understand what's happening. I haven't developed the skills in order to communicate what I need.
So they break down.
So they break down. And so what a parent needs to do is not say, you get everything. So definitely there should be rules around what we're putting in our mouth. There should definitely, in all instances, right? There should, depending on, how the culture of your family is in terms of what you're eating or drinking and all those sorts of things. But the frame should really be about, how do I provide the space so that I'm able to say yes? The child will then grow up in a sense of support, that my parent is there to support me. And so you build skills slowly. And so, the conversation you have with a 6-year-old, or the conversation I'm having with my teenage boys when they are asking me for my credit card, right, builds, right, to this place where I'm providing guidelines and guardrails and having that communication. But I think that oftentimes we start trying to negotiate with young children before they're ready. And so that's why I say, build a yes environment. So if the 2-year-old comes to me, can I have the 9 out of 10 times you should be able to say yes, because you as the adult have provided an environment that everything in there is accessible. Children should be able to access the toys. If possible, they're able to access snacks that are safe. And that way, again, the negotiation that happens allows for less tantrums, not no tantrums, because
it's
kids
impossible.
will find
they'll always find a way
to be tantrum about. I mean, I can just think about putting on shoes, right? So again, it's about picking our battles, right? Are we going to choose to have the battle about the car? No, you have a car, you have a car.
Right.
I'm not asking
something
you to
like that.
turns,
You're setting up an
right?
environment that can prevent those tantrums from occurring.
Yeah.
But also but these are also operating under the understanding of rules that have been slowly set. For example, what I'm thinking that comes to mind when you're saying 9 out of 10, but you also don't want to have it where the child's saying, can I have ice cream for dinner? No, because you established those rules that dinner does not involve ice cream.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
I think that's just something I wanted to understand with. Now, would parents be able to go to the Child Care Council of Nassau and speak with you or others and say, I need advice or I need help, or if they don't have that support at home where they don't have anyone they can rely on, but they are totally lost. This is what's happening with my son, my daughter, my twins. is there somebody I can talk to? Can you can they talk to you? Do you refer them to somebody they can talk to?
Yeah.
How does it work?
Both. So, we get parents all the time that are calling, particularly with kids who are biters, right? So they're,
Right.
they have a child who's a biter in a childcare program. The childcare program is saying, you need to figure this out. The family is like, we've tried everything.
Yep.
Who do I get for help? So those families and any other families that are having challenging behaviors that the childcare program is unable to support can call us. We do have some infant toddler mental health consultants on staff that can do some intensive if it gets to be at the level where they are really needing the program is needing support, not just the family to kind of get some tips and techniques. Then we have that available as well to child care programs. But families can definitely call us when they're having issues. And then depending on the issue, we also then refer out. So to early intervention, to Help Me Grow Long Island, who is a fabulous organization that provides developmental screening for families. So if they're not I'm not sure, it feels like something is my son is not meeting the milestones that my first son did, and I just have a few questions, then they can get connected to Help Me Grow Long Island, and they do a free developmental screening because it's difficult to get screenings for particularly that 0 to 3 phase. But we know that if they can be screened at that young age, and then the parent, and if they're in care, the caregiver can provide some developmental supports, that oftentimes children will grow out of any sort of kind of delay. And so we want to make sure that families have access to that sooner than later.
Do you also, with those costs associated, obviously we just talked about childcare is so expensive. What about now with all this therapeutic assistance? Is there a cost associated with that too? Does it fall under insurance? How does that operate for the parents?
Yeah, great question. So the county does have funds for some of these services. You do have to go through an assessment process. You have to get connected to the right people. But if your child is flagged for needing assistance, then the county would support the cost for that. Where there's kind of a space for us to do more is, my child doesn't meet the eligibility for early intervention services, but there is a delay, right? Like they could benefit from a speech therapist or an occupational therapist. And so that's where then they would need to negotiate with their private insurance or potentially come out of pocket to support. And so that's, again, an area that we need to think about as a society, because it would be really helpful for families who are already stressed about kind of my kid is not where I need my kid to be,
right,
to then have to say, and now I need to find money to provide.
And isn't that good for society, again, going long term, right, at the outset by having these children? Because doesn't that compound and become aggravated as the child develops without said issues being addressed?
And they can, start off as a speech challenge that could have been mitigated, and then develop into behavioral challenges because the child's now in a group setting where that there's not as much understanding, and so they pick up the block and throw it across the room, right? So it's like if I had really had the funds and the identification early to provide the supports, then it wouldn't have gotten to where it did. So yes, it's
right. Instead of the
a
child
preventative
lashing out, or the child then becomes quiet or shy or reserved, and then suppresses their own, all because of this development that did not get addressed early on.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you see that too, long-term problems, and then leads to violence or worse, frankly. So I think that's something that is a real big reason or motivator to get done and to persuade, hopefully, our local county, towns, and in state to do such to focus on some policy that would actually incentivize that.
Yes,
to get that
and
funding.
it's also really we got to build that workforce because what
That's
we're
the
seeing
infrastructure. See
exactly that? Is that families, even if they get to the evaluation and the diagnosis, are on long wait lists to get the support that they need. And, a long 6-month wait list for a 14-year-old is very different than a 6-month wait list for a 1.5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Like
Think about that. That's a third of their life, right?
Exactly.
That's or 20%, 25% of their life by the age which is fascinating when you look at that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. 1.5 to 2 versus 14 to 14.5.
Right.
Yep. The development is wow.
It's massive. Yeah.
It is. So now leading to the third issue that you would say in terms of what you get from parents in their top 3. We have affordability, accessibility. What would you say number 3 would be then?
I think accountability is the
accountability.
third.
We got a lot of alliteration here.
Exactly. It's the 3. When you talk about childcare, we always talk about the 3 A's and then the Q, which is quality, right?
Quality.
That would be the 4th. But
yes.
Accountability is very important to families. Again, you're leaving your most precious thing in someone else's hands, so you want to make sure that they are the program has the right systems in place to ensure the health and safety of care. And again,
so let's talk about this background checks then.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So for people that are concerned and they want that accountability, what is the process for these background checks? So this is just a quick, hey, this guy, Mike LiPetri is fine. That's it. Meanwhile, or how does it operate?
No, the state has actually moved quite dramatically in improving the background checks for child care workers. Historically, they did always had to be fingerprinted, so you couldn't be currently a criminal. But there were some loopholes that it was only kind of statewide background check system that you could, have committed a crime in New Jersey and then moved to New York and then,
Totally fine.
Totally fine. So recently that has been
that has been
it
cleared
has
up.
been cleared up. So you can no longer.
And nobody is grandfathered in for that, correct?
No.
Okay,
No.
So we have purged all
Exactly.
those. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's just make. I want to have the
It's
record
good.
straight here. Everyone's been purged under this new system in place that got through this loophole that's now been cleared.
Yes. So we are very, very thankful that the state tightened up that background check.
Is there constant yearly checkups, semi-annual checkups, quarterly checkups, anything of the sort, inspections, anything done like random inspections, anything like that provided by the state or local municipalities?
Yeah, so the state does review the license pairing for a child care program is every 4 years, but there's a mid-year review, and then there are annual checks, again, depending on the staffing of
OCFS?
Of OCFS.
Okay.
And they're also, if there's a complaint call, then they automatic. You have to respond to a complaint.
How long is that period if there's a complaint?
Usually OCFS is there within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Is there anything in the local municipalities that they follow up or anything of the sort, or is it strictly just state?
Well, if the child care program accepts families that are eligible for child care subsidy, then the counties do more of a kind of fraud checking for the program.
More of an accounting than anything else.
Yes.
Okay.
And it depending on the different quality enhancements that the program is in. So the Child Care Council of Nassau and Suffolk both operate the Child and Adult Care Food Program, which is a federally funded program that reimburses child care providers for serving nutritious meals during care.
Oh, okay.
And so we have food monitors that go out into programs quite frequently. So every 3 months or so, we're in and out of programs that participate in the CACFP program.
And which program is that?
The Child and Adult Care Food Program.
Okay, now that is for providers. Now there's also a CCAP program.
Yes, so the Child Care Assistance Program.
Yeah, what is that?
Is for families. So And we recently increased the counties statewide, increased the eligibility for families who are able to receive child care subsidy from 200% of poverty to 300% of poverty. So that's about 93,000 for a family of four, and would be eligible for child care assistance.
So 93K and down would be eligible for this assistance program.
Right, and that is provided through the counties.
Okay, so both Nassau and Suffolk offer that.
Correct.
Excellent.
Correct.
Now, do you know what type of assistance that would be provided? Would it be that child care is covered then, if you fall under that threshold, or is there a metric system where maybe a portion of it's covered? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's usually a portion, and then there's a parent share and copay.
Right.
And so some of the conversation that has been pushed at the state level is to reduce it. During the pandemic, it was reduced to 10%, so you couldn't go above 10% of a family's income for their share. But we're trying to reduce it even more so that the county and the state is really providing the majority of the assistance.
How would a family apply for this program?
So they would need to go directly to the Department of Social Services for the county in which they live in.
Oh, okay. So the county Department of Social Services.
Correct.
Okay, and then they'll steer them in the direction.
Yes, if they do have questions, they can definitely call the council, and we can.
Council's got it all.
we can talk you through and get you to the right place, but it's administered through the county.
Yes, because as you know, sometimes you'll have it where you have to make 11 different phone calls to get through departments. So I think that would be very convenient and supportive for any residents who needs that assistance. So that's something that's great that offers that. I don't think many people even are aware of that.
No, I'm not sure that many are aware of it. And we did in the governor's budget, she is looking to help streamline some of those processes. So you're talking about the 11 calls, right? So you have to fill out the application for SNAP benefits or for WIC benefits, and then you have to then go to childcare. And so we're trying to find ways that if you're eligible for one, then you get all of the information for the others, and you don't have to repeat the paperwork 11 times. So that's something that hopefully will go through to allow it to be easier for families, particularly as we increase the eligibility. More families are aware, and so the counties are going to have to process much more paperwork if they have to do it with each different program instead of just the one. So this could be a win-win for all involved. And then OCFS also did just create a kind of eligibility survey, so that if you're not sure, you can go on the Office of Children and Family Services website, and they have this new kind of eligibility survey. It doesn't approve you or deny you for assistance, but it will give you a better sense of, you're like, am I there? Am I on the cusp? Do I make it? And so you can fill out this very short survey and to say, yes, you are available, and then it would have a link to your local Department of Social Services.
Is it strictly just income, or is there deductions that you can have? Like if you say you're a family of four, but you're making more than that, than the 93,000, but you own this, or children are this same age or in this range. Does that all exist, or is it straight up just income?
It's basically just
income. I was hoping. All right. I was just trying. Viewers, listeners are just, they were like, is there an exception or something?
No.
So where is the future of childcare on Long Island? Where does the council want to see the future of childcare go?
Yeah, so I think that there's, again, a lot of opportunity right now with the kind of spotlight on childcare. And so there's a large push for universal childcare to really kind of get out of this kind of business model paradigm where, families are having a burden, and childcare industry is also facing many hurdles, particularly around the workforce. And so if we provided the supports that are needed, particularly for the compensation of the workforce, I think that's where childcare in the industry is really, really struggling to kind of keep up with what families need in order to operate. Then I think that we'll be in a better place. So I would just flag for your listeners that compensation for the workforce is a great need to think about as we move forward. And then if there's there's a lot of conversation about what would universal childcare look like. How do we think about the childcare system interacting with the K-12 system. So there's been some articles in the news recently about can the childcare be just like the education where the county gets, the districts get an allocated amount, can that be similar in the childcare space? I think that we're not ready for that as a state to kind of move in that direction.
Yeah. I know for me, like I always get petrified when I hear the word universal, only because I think about government and then how terrible they roll out so many different things. And the last thing I want is government touching my child. So I think that's what raises my concerns off the bat, because I'm thinking about it from a specific area of government policies, incentivizing the infrastructure, obviously motivating the pay to be increased by having it. Also, another thing is the length of education to go into actually creating and cultivating these different teachers and social workers.
Right. We need more pathways on Long Island. There isn't an early childhood education program in the higher education. We used to have it, but they've gone away because it's as a university, if you don't have folks coming to take those classes, then it doesn't pay to have the program, right? And so, it's like this catch-22 where we need to incentivize.
It's a cultural mentality change. That's what you really need.
Yeah.
Where you're focusing. I think everyone went into this, as I said, universal college, all that stuff. But the mentality's got to change where you're focusing on kids and child growth and development and encouraging younger generations to have children and want to have children and see them as a blessing, not a burden.
Right.
And I think, and for me, I really like the idea of that employer benefit model where we're creating. Now you have so much portability. Now one of the benefits that government would then work in tandem with employers is maybe cultivating this again harmony that makes it where employers can offer these benefits to
directly to their employees.
Correct.
Yeah, and
correct.
I think we have to move beyond. There has been some experimentation with tax credits, but businesses haven't really taken the state up on getting those child care incentive tax credits. So it's got to look a little different. I think that it needs businesses want to feel maybe more involved than just kind of the tax credit idea. And so is there a way to either do childcare on site, which I think is a pretty big lift, but if you could partner with existing programs, then I think that there's a lot more synergy in how this works.
Yeah, right? I mean, a crazy thing that's going through my head right now, and off the top, I don't even know if this is something that could be executed, but I'm just thinking about as if you have Uber system where you got strangers to call other strangers and say, hey, pick me up and take me to a destination.
You did, didn't
and
you?
It sounds pretty ludicrous, but now I'm thinking in my head, what if we had a system in place where it's not a nanny per se, right? But you're basically saying, hey, from these hours, can you cover and come over to my place, and then you're watching my kids. And you have an entire system set up that has scrutinized, investigated all these different individuals who are on this list, and then they come for X fee that works in tandem as a hybrid model with your employer, as a benefit with the government, and then your own pay, and then
Something
that could
like
allow.
that. I mean,
and then now you're eliminating the rent and overhead expenses,
right?
and now having that at home, so you see the cost drop, and now you're really looking at more so from a salary expense than anything else.
It's possible. I mean, I think one thing that there's been a lot of interest in is having a substitute pool. And so that's similarly, it wouldn't be exactly like having childcare providers available to kind of come to someone's home. But, what we just did a survey, and 97% of all childcare programs are not able to open a classroom because they don't have the employee that they need in order to open that classroom. So it means about 20,000 kids who could be supported by childcare right now are not being supported because the programs don't have the people to do it.
Just like the staff, like
just staffing,
like just operations, not like teaching.
No,
you're saying teaching, like just not even a teacher.
Yeah, the teacher, they don't have a teacher or a teaching assistant.
That's crazy.
To open a classroom, and so what would be amazing is if we had a substitute pool. So, again, if 5 teachers call in sick that day, then, I can't open 1, maybe 2 classrooms in my center. And so families are feeling that, right? So that, my child has a space in a childcare program, but I need to keep them home this week because so-and-so is sick. And so-and-so, is going to get sick. So how do we provide some other supports? If there was a substitute pool where the childcare program could call in, right, just like a temp, right? Call in someone who's on a list, who's been vetted, who's got the background checks, and are you available to substitute in this 2-year-old classroom today? The K-12 system has substitutes, right? You can.
Could you borrow from the K through 12 substitute system?
Unfortunately, because
it's DOE and OCFS.
Yeah,
that's the only reason. See, this is what I'm talking about. This government.
They don't.
I have substitute teachers here that are not being used today, and we need them over here.
It's a space for opportunity.
That's
right?
totally
there's
space.
Got to be
there has to be some overlap.
Coordination there. There's got to be.
You went through tons of schooling to go teach. Clearly, we can vet you. There's a separate list of hybrid substitute teachers in the K through 12 that can then act.
If you have there is the teaching certificate that's birth through 2. So if you have that birth through 2 certificate, then
why not?
Come on. Let's
figure this out. I think we got something.
We're gonna change the world.
We're gonna check this. I love it. But Joy, this has been such an absolute pleasure chatting with you. You are wonderful. I think your organization is integral both in Nassau and Suffolk County, being able to be there for so many parents, for so many families. And for one, I want to say thank you so much for coming on, because this has been illuminating for me, and I'm sure for many listeners and the audience alike. So thank you so much. And again, how do they reach you?
They can reach us on our website, childcarenassau.org. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Or you can give us a call, 516-358-9250.
Thanks so much. You're the best.
Thank you.